G'day everyone, my name is Maydad Ronan and thank you for joining me for another Neural Awareness Programming short video for the week. Today I'm joined with special guest, breath coach David Pemberton, who's going to be talking about the benefits of the Buteyko breathing method. G'day Dave, how you doing?
G'day, mate. Ed. I'm great, mate. Thanks for this Monday evening. Thank you for hosting such wonderful seminars for people to listen to. Yeah, I'm really excited to let everybody know that actually the way that we should be breathing. Yeah, I can't wait to get started to let everybody and educate everybody on how important this nose is right in the middle of our face.
That's right. And what Dave is talking about is nasal breathing. I'm not going to hold you up, Dave, and I'm just going to let you get right into it.
Great. Let me just share my screen. I've got a presentation. Good evening, everybody. As Mate Ed kindly said, my name is David Pemberton, also known as the breathing coach. For me, I'm also a men's mental health advocate. I'm a sports-specific breathwork coach as well, plus a life coach and a PT and strength and conditioning coach. I'm also trained in the Buteyko Clinic International. I'm a certified instructor, and Buteyko has definitely changed my life. I was a chronic asthmatic, chronic mouth breather. I no longer have asthma after 50 odd years of having pharmacological interventions such as Ventolin and Seretide. Discovering the power of breathing through the nose has definitely changed my life, eliminated all my asthma symptoms, and given me a better quality of life. So now I teach people how to breathe. And funnily enough, a lot of us are not breathing correctly. So I'm just about to start the presentation. I hope you find this very, very interesting. I certainly did when I discovered breathing properly three and a half years ago. Completely changed my life. So let me get into it. The breathing coach, Buteyko Clinic International, is for the autoimmune issues such as asthma, COPD, snoring, sleep apnea, anxiety, depression, with the foundation being nasal breathing. The oxygen advantage, which you see there, invincible breathing, that is basically the Buteyko method taken over and put into a sports environment. So you've probably noticed a lot of the here in Australia, the NRL teams have all done some type of breath work or breathing to calm themselves down, particularly after they score a try. But they don't realize that actually doing training in the pre-season to enhance their tolerance to carbon dioxide, and we will talk about that shortly, will improve their oxygen efficiency delivery to their working tissues, but also reduce their breathlessness. The last one there in the worldwide IPHM accreditation is I'm an accredited ice bath coach too. And when we have ice baths, it's vitally important that we understand how to breathe and calm ourselves down when we get into cold water or even when we get into a hot environment like a sauna. It is still nasal breathing, it is light nasal breathing, it is slow and it is deep into the diaphragm. So that's me in a nutshell. Let's move on. Functional breathing. There are three main aspects or dimensions to your functional breathing. You've got your biochemistry, which is breathing less air to improve tolerance to carbon dioxide. Normalization of how many breaths we take per minute is now between 12 and 20. 20 is bordering on hyperventilation. So that's not normal. Research shows us that the optimal breathing is about 6 breaths a minute. At rest and even during low to medium intensity exercise, up to 10 breaths a minute. The less we breathe, the more oxygen delivery we get from our lungs into our bloodstream and to our working condition, to our working muscles. Let me say that again. The less we breathe, the more oxygen we get delivered, or better, gas diffusion from the lungs into the bloodstream, into our working tissues. And I'll expand on that a little bit further. We've got the biomechanics, breathing low to improve recruitment of the diaphragm breathing muscle. The diaphragm is the primary breathing muscle. Too many people that breathe through their mouth often have a neck pain, upper back pain, lower back pain, tightness through the thoracic cage, through our ribs, because we're using those secondary muscles to breathe when it should be the diaphragm. We've all been told somewhere along the line from a PT, a coach, or anybody, take a big deep breath in. Well, I'm going to bust that myth now. Taking a big deep breath in can actually enhance a stress response when we're probably trying to do the opposite. Deep means far from the top. That's all. It doesn't mean massive. It doesn't mean big. So if you want to take a deep breath in, it should be slow. Low means into the diaphragm, and deep. LSD, low, slow, and deep. So by calming ourselves down, a nice, long, slow, deep breath in through the nose and then out through the nose will get us to be nice and calm. Then we've got our resonance frequency breathing, or the cadence, how many breaths per minute we breathe. And as I said before, slow breathing, 6 breaths per minute, brings balance to our autonomic nervous system. So breathing light, low, slow, and deep is the 3 dimensions of functional breathing. Now, if you don't have functional breathing, you don't have functional movement. If your diaphragm is not fully recruited, which diaphragm provides, it's a 360-degree muscle around the spine, provides intra-abdominal support for anything that you're doing. So full recruitment of the diaphragm is when we nasally breathe. Very important when we're in a sports environment, or lifting heavy weights, or just walking. It is great for postural. And there is, once again, research out there that people have breathed their way out of scoliosis by activating their diaphragm and doing breathing exercises. The nose, nature's gift in the middle of our face, is designed for breathing. It conditions the air coming into the nose and increases the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood by approximately 10%. It also increases carbon dioxide in the blood, and this is very important. Carbon dioxide is not just a waste gas. Carbon dioxide has been demonized. Just going to ask a little quick question here. If anybody just quickly on the top of their head knows how much CO2 is in our atmosphere, I'll give you some information here, or statistics. We've got 20.9% oxygen. We've got around about 78% nitrogen. So you add those two up, 78 and 20, let's call it 21, we're at 99. There's not a lot of CO2 in our atmosphere. It's actually 0.04%. Now, our body requires 5%. So if we're over breathing all the time, we're offloading too much CO2. CO2 is the primary stimulus for us to breathe. It is not oxygen. So once we understand by breathing low and slow and deeper into the bottom of our lungs, breathing less, this is where we get more oxygen uptake or better diffusion. Air hunger. We don't like to say the word suffocation, so we use the word air hunger. We've known about this since 1904 when Danish scientist Christian Bohr, he's come up with the Bohr effect, knows that when we overbreathe, which also leads to vasoconstriction, which is getting rid of the CO2 in our bloodstream, and CO2 is actually a vasodilator. So those with hypertension need to be breathing less to open up your airways. CO2 plays a vital role in oxygen delivery. And I'm going to nerd out here for a little bit. Oxygen is carried around our body through the blood on the hemoglobin, which is a protein. There's 4 receptor sites on the hemoglobin, which carries the oxygen. Now, that oxygen cannot be released from that hemoglobin into our working tissues without the presence of CO2. So if CO2 is not present, that oxygen does not go where it's needed most, which is to our working tissues. So it's vitally important that we understand that CO2 is a vital component in the way that we breathe and are responsible for the efficiency of our oxygen uptake. Nasal breathing benefits. The nose is perfectly designed for breathing. There's currently 30 benefits of nasal breathing that we know about. I'll be sending Maydad a PDF with the 30 functions of the nose, which I'm quite happy for him to send out to anybody that requests that. Nasal breathing benefits. Filters the airborne particulates. We've got as many nasal nostril hairs as we do as hair follicles on our head. It filters out the airborne particulates. Humidifies and warms the inhaled air to around about 30 degrees. It increases the airflow to arteries, veins, and nerves by better oxygen uptake, which is the next one, increases the oxygen uptake and circulation. Production of NO, which is nitric oxide, not nitrous, but nitric oxide in our paranasal sinuses. Nitric oxide has been called the wonder molecule or the miracle molecule. Nitric oxide, when we breathe in through the nose, allows our airways to open up, attaching to the oxygen and delivering down deep into the alveoli with our 100% diaphragm recruitment, where we get that better diffusion of gas exchange into our bloodstream. Nitric oxide is also formed around other parts of our body, but we increase the production of the nitric oxide by breathing through our nose. Nitric oxide is man-made also. It's in the form of a little blue pill, I think it's blue or green, that a lot of us know about, which is Viagra. That is nitric oxide. So nitric oxide opens up, it's a vasodilator. It opens up our airways, opens up our blood vessels as well. Breathing through the nose will slow down your breathing. You physically can't breathe through your nose quickly. We can breathe deeply and big, but we can't breathe quickly unless you're doing breath of fire. So it's regulating, it's providing the right air pressure. It improves our lung volume, improves and strengthens the diaphragm muscle, our primary breathing muscle. It lowers your risk of allergies and hay fever, reduces the risk of coughing. When we breathe through our mouth, we don't have any filtration system. So the airborne particulates hit the back of our throat, and our first line of defense is to cough. Now, our tonsils may also get flamed out. Adenoids also get inflamed by this cold, harsh air with these airborne particulates hitting the back of our throat. Now, if you're a runner, you're 50% more likely to have to disrupt the pH in your mouth, which would lead to extra bacterial growth, which could lead to gum disease and also more fillings or decay. So if you get more holes there, so more dental visits. Reduces the risk of coughing. Nobody likes to cough, and that hurts, particularly when it gets down in the mid-chest. But if we breathe through our nose, we limit the amount of airborne particulates coming into our mouth. Aids and boosts your immune system. Nitric oxide is also an antimicrobial and antibacterial properties to it. Lowers your risk of snoring and sleep apnea. This is a big one. A CPAP, which is continuous positive airway pressure, is just designed to put the right amount of pressure in your airways to keep your airways open. The beautiful thing about the nose is it does that. It does that already. It regulates the amount of air that comes in. Now you can still snore through your nose if there's too much air coming in through your nose. But nasal breathing will eliminate mouth snoring. So all those partners out there whose partner snores or says they don't snore, but they do snore, by changing the way that you breathe can eliminate that. It also can help reduce the effects of sleep apnea. This is where mouth taping comes in. And mouth taping is a thing, yes, and I've been doing it for 3.5 years. It helps aid and rewire neural pathways. So when we're not thinking about breathing, we breathe through our nose. That's perhaps one of the most important questions I'm going to ask you all now, is how are you breathing when you're not thinking about breathing? So if you catch yourself in a relaxed or watching television, reading a book, or just listening to somebody and your mouth is open, there's a good chance that you've got a dysfunctional breathing pattern. perhaps the most important one for children, supports correct formation of teeth and mouth through tongue placement. Now, I'd like everybody to say the letter N, and once you finish saying the letter N, leave your tongue where it ends. Now, N, it should end up in the boundary of the top teeth. Leave your tongue there and try and breathe through your mouth. You can't. It's physically impossible. So with nasal breathing, in the tongue at the position at the top of the mouth, the tongue is now providing scaffolding for the correct formation of the maxilla, which is this top part of your jaw, and it's expanding naturally by the force of the tongue being at the top of the mouth. 1 in 2 kids, unfortunately, these days are getting some type of orthodontic work. And Dr. Mark Levi in Paddington there in Sydney, he's one of the leaders in airway health. He's a big, big believer in breathing through the nose, and particularly the Buteyko method. So by having the tongue at the top of the mouth, and the tongue is a muscle, so it strengthens by being up there, it's negating the effects of obstructive sleep apnea, where the tongue, not being as strong, falls back into the back of the mouth and diminishing the airway, so not allowing you to breathe properly. So there is exercises to increase the strength of the tongue. And Dr. John and Mike Mew, which if you've got young kids in that teenage years between 12 and 14, I'm sure they're all over mewing. Mewing is a thing. It's not what the cows do, but when they have their school photos, everybody puts the tongue to the top of their mouth. What does it do? It brings their jaw forward and makes them a nice bit more photogenic when they have their school photos done. So there's some homework for you. Having a look at Dr. John and Mike Mew. They've been around there. They used to be orthodontists, and then discovered that the correct formation of the tongue the correct tongue placement will lead to better formation of the jaw and better airway health. Now, on the flip side of nasal breathing benefits, we've also got the risks of oral breathing. The mouth has no function in breathing. It only provides an entrance. It's a big hole. It lets air in and it lets air out. And I'm not saying that we're never going to be able to breathe through our mouth. We have to. I'm actually doing it now. I can't physically breathe through my nose and talk at the same time. But the two primary functions of the mouth is doing what I'm doing, speaking, and the second one is eating. Breathing is the most important thing that you'll do today. So if we were supposed to breathe through the mouth, it would be the number one function of the mouth, but it's simply not. That's what the nose is for. The nose is perfectly designed for breathing. The mouth, it's eating and speaking. Now, mouth breathing, losing 42% of moisture, causing dry mouth. So if you're going for a run, or if you're on a cycle in a gym and you've got 30 minutes and you have to constantly keep refilling yourself and hydrating yourself, you don't have to do that as much as if you actually nasal breathe. 42% of moisture, also the moisture or the saliva in our mouth has got the right type of pH, which if we've got good bacteria in there, it doesn't dry it out, so we get less decay. Mouth breathing increases the risk of inhaling unfiltered air, risk of trauma to airways. This is where we get our exercise-induced asthma. We have a lot of people in gyms that go to the gyms with a puffer. They don't have asthma outside of the gym, but it's only when they go to the gym because they breathe too much through their mouth. That unfiltered air coming in, inflaming their airways, start to wheeze, have their puff of their ventilator, they get back into it. It can all be avoided if they breathe through their nose. Increased risk of asthma. I spoke about exercise-induced asthma. Increased risk of allergic reactions, well, because our nose is not filtering the airborne particulates that come in. Bad breath, dental decay, gum disease. Increased risk of mouth snoring and sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea. And increased risk of teeth and jaw abnormalities. So how do we define, or how do we know that we've got a dysfunctional breathing pattern? Here's some quick questions. If you answer yes to a couple of these, there may be an opportunity for you to have a look at your breathing or be a bit more aware of your breathing. Do you sleep with your mouth open? Do you keep your mouth open when you are distracted? And that's that question. How do you breathe when you're not thinking about breathing? Do you snore? Do you mouth snore? Do you drool on your pillow? We've all done that. We've all woken up after crashing out on a pillow or the couch and we've woken up and there's a wet patch. Do we experience excessive daytime sleepiness? Do you wake up with a headache? Do you get tired easily? Do you often have allergies? Do you often have a stuffy nose and or runny nose? There's a vicious cycle there. The more that our nose is stuffy and runny, the more we breathe through our mouth, and therefore it doesn't clear. And for children, do they have difficulty in school? Difficulty concentrating? A lot of kids getting diagnosed with ADHD at the moment, but there's nobody checking their breathing patterns. Why? There's now links between ADHD and incorrect breathing or hyperarousal of prefrontal cortex by too much oxygen. If you answered yes to any of those questions, or if you put to have a look at your children, just observe your children. How are they breathing when they're not thinking about breathing? Stick them in front of an iPad. I don't want to do that all the time though. Or the television. Just observe how they're breathing. Is their jaw hanging down? Is their jaw set back? Are they gulping for air? Do they sigh often? There's another one. Do you get up the middle of the night to go to the toilet? There's another sign, potential sign of a dysfunctional breathing pattern. Sleep is designed for rest and restoration. So if you're snoring, got sleep, obstructive sleep apnea, insomnia, racing mind, panic disorder, anxiety, or getting up to go to the toilet numerous times, there's a good chance that your breathing is disrupted or dysfunctional. Just observe when you wake up. Is your mouth open? Is your mouth dry when you wake up? There's a good chance that the way that you breathe during the night is a reflection of the way that you breathe during the day. And this is where breathing is so important. And there's a lot of what we call conscious connection breathing out there at the moment, which is a lot of people use for trauma release and things like that, or yogic type breathing or breathing for Pilates. They're all fabulous and they all serve their purpose. And we call those conscious connection breathing because we're consciously connecting to that specific breath work or breathing technique for a specific outcome. But the Buteyko breathing method is steeped in science, and it's how you are breathing when you're not thinking about breathing. So when you're unconscious, when you're not aware of how you're breathing, how are you breathing? And it should be through the nose every single time should be your answer. So these are some of the effects of oral breathing in children. And you look around and just observe in the shopping, youngsters, if you've got grandchildren, if you've got children. I've got the classic shape of a mouth breather. Long face, short face, or width is not very short. If I go from side on, my jaw is set back. I'm missing teeth because they're being pulled to allow the teeth to grow properly. My face is almost like that little girl's there on the right-hand side. But the little boy here, he was 12 years old in that first photo. Then he broke his nose and he couldn't breathe through his nose, and that's him 3 years later. So you can see the remarkable difference in the shape and the look of his face. Classic symptoms, and sadly it's becoming all too often that we see in young children that they're not breathing correctly. And it is directly attributing to the way they look. And yes, it can be passed down. So it is an ancestral thing which can be passed down through genealogy. So back in the 1980s, to experiment to see the dysfunction breathing and breathing through the nose, and I don't condone working on animals and anything or experimenting on monkeys, but in the 1980s, the rhesus monkeys had nasal passages blocked during the first 6 months of life. And interestingly, there was a guy called James Nestor who wrote the book Breath. In the first chapter in that book, he's a scientific journalist and he spent 5 to 10 years looking at all the research on breathing and experimented on himself. In the first chapter of that book, he only blocked his nose for 10 days with silicone implants. Him and his offsider. And they noted down all the things that went wrong with them, which are very, very similar to some of this. So the first 6 months of their life, at the end of the period, the monkeys were found to have narrowing of the dental arches. So a high palate and narrowing. Decreased maxillary arc length. This is your maxilla here from the top of your, under your eyelids there, down to that top jaw. That's called your maxilla, and your mandible's the one underneath. Anterior crossbite. Anterior just means in the middle, so your front teeth are coming over your bottom teeth. Maxillary overjet, same similar thing. And increased anterior facial height, which is here. So if you go back to here, on the right-hand side of that cartoon, classic example of a functioning face with correct airway health. We've got the square jaw, mouth is closed. At the end of the 6 month period, the rhesus monkeys were allowed to breathe normally through their noses, which led to a normalization of muscle discharge and a restoration of adequate orofacial growth, which means if we change from mouth breathing to nasal breathing, we can change. If we get onto it early enough, we can change the way that we look. We can increase our airway health. Our facial features don't stop growing till we're about 18. Which, interestingly enough, there is a bit of a push away now from putting braces on 12 and 13-year-olds till their faces stop growing. Because, yes, while superficially they might have straight teeth, they could be compromising the rest of their airway health. And if you'd like a budding sporting champion in your as a child or your children, you've got high hopes for them. If they're not breathing right, if they haven't got the proper airway health, they may never actually be able to breathe as best they can to get to the heights that they want to get to. So just food for thought. So mouth taping, better sleep, better recovery. As I said, it is a thing. This is me on the left-hand side there, mouth taping. You'll notice that I use mouth tape that goes around the outside of my lips. It just gently encourages my lips together. Now, the reason why it's vitally important that we don't completely seal the lips at all is that we still need to offload excess CO2. There's a phenomenon called mouth puffing that we have to actually release the built-up of air in our mouth, and we have to be able to release that somehow when we're unconscious. I've got research that says that if we completely seal our lips, we could actually increase our obstructive sleep apnea and snoring symptoms by up to 50%. So I do highly recommend that you sleep either with a cross the lips here, or something that goes around the outside to just gently encourage the lips to come together. Now we've got here a guy in the middle who's, and once again, I don't advocate for this, he ran a marathon with his mouth taped. When your metabolic requirements are exceeded, we'll have to open up our mouth and breathe through. However, when running steady state cardio through nasal breathing, zone 2, zone 3, it should be achievable. But if you exceed that and go into what we call zone 4, zone 5, you'll have to offload that extra CO2, which is built up in our muscles. We have to release that somehow. On the right-hand side, we've got Iga Swiatek, and you might have heard of her name. She's a tennis player from Poland. She's just won Wimbledon this year, not more than 2. I think it was in June, Wimbledon. So she tapes her mouth while she's practicing to build up that tolerance to carbon dioxide. Remember, carbon dioxide is the primary catalyst to breathe. So the more CO2 we breathe up, the less that we have to breathe, which means we get better oxygen delivery. And the gentleman on the bottom there has come out and says that he also, when he sleeps at night, and obviously that's just an AI generated photo, that's not a real, it's a band-aid there, but he says he sleeps with his mouth closed with tape for recovery purposes. And that's Erlen Harling, who is arguably the world's greatest striker at present, plays for Manchester City. So when you do your physical exercise while breathing through your nose with your mouth closed, not only will it increase the pressure of the oxygen in your blood, it will also increase oxygen delivery from your blood to the tissues. Now, this may be the reason people say they have better recovery post-physical exercise with nasal breathing. Recovery is vital. Recovery is a key performance indicator in health. And the functional breathing exercises which the Buteyko and Oxygen Advantage offer are important for effective recovery. There is a buffering which buffers up to lactic acid system by breathing less and building up that tolerance to carbon dioxide. So in summary, when you do your physical exercise while breathing through your mouth with your mouth closed, it will increase the pressure in your blood. You get better recovery post-physical exercise. As I said, recovery is vital. But when you first switch from mouth to nasal breathing, you will get a strong air hunger, which may lead to you going, oh, I can't do this because I used to be able to run a 5-minute K, now I'm only running a 6-minute K. Yes, you may have to regress till your body gets used to nasal breathing. When you calm yourself down, you'll run more efficiently and you'll get back to that 5K, um, or even less. It's interesting that the adaptation can be as little as 6 to 10 weeks. But the breathing exercises that the 𝐷𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸 method offers, an oxygen advantage, is critical. They are daily exercises that you do to increase that tolerance to carbon dioxide and initially breathing through the nose. So we should be breathing through our nose during low to moderate intensity exercise and continue to breathe through the nose. But when you are doing very intense exercise and you find breathing through your nose really difficult, you breathe through your nose and out through your mouth. It's like a gear system, nose, 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 mouth. But when the air hunger gets too much, you use your mouth to breathe. Now, the interesting fact about nasal breathing is we're using oxygen as our primary fuel system. So oxygen combined then with our fats and our carbs, we will burn more fat by nasal breathing, which is our aerobic system, as opposed to mouth breathing, which is using glycol. Mouth breathing is a stress response. So if we're running and we've got our mouth open, we're training ourselves for glycol resistance training rather than aerobic training. Yes, we will get some type of aerobic training. But if you want true aerobic conditioning zone 2, zone 3, you need to be nasal breathing. So if you breathe through your mouth, it's a stress response. It is going to negatively impact your biochemistry, your biomechanics, and your autonomic nervous system, especially during rest and sleep. So during rest and sleep, you should always use your nose. There's a lot of breathing techniques out there, but the 𝐷𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸, as I said before, is steeped in science. It was brought to Australia, funnily enough. It was one of the first places. In 1994, the first trials were done in the Mater Hospital in Brisbane with overwhelming success, increasing people's quality of life scores by up to 54%, particularly for asthmatics, reducing reliance on pharmacological intervention by between 70 and 90%. Outstanding, outstanding results, which is why it's still around today. And I believe there's still about 20, 22 current papers at the moment describing how beneficial the 𝐷𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸 breathing method is. To calm your autonomic nervous systems or to balance, there's a lot of talk now about regulating nervous systems and things like that. Yes, and we've got the physiological side, which is great in the moment to reduce your stress levels. But if you continue to mouth breathe after that, you're going straight back into a stress response. You could be at your computer, and if you're breathing through your mouth, even though you're still, your body believes there's a lion sitting in the corner of the room, and it is in that heightened state of arousal. Coffee, processed foods all lead to this. We are one of the few species that doesn't know how to automatically balance our nervous system. We've gone away from using the nose, what it's intended for. The nose is intended for us to keep us calm. It is intended to make us breathe. It is intended to keep us being efficient human beings. If we're mouth breathing, we are in a chronic state of stress. We're hyperventilating. We're breathing in and out too quickly, which is where we get these 15 to 20 breaths now normal because so many of us are breathing through our mouth. So breathing through your nose is paramount if we want to balance our nervous system if we want to be more efficient with our oxygen uptake and delivery. It's more important for our performance. It's important for it when we're working and we're under deadlines and we've got reports to write, or we work in a physical job to be able to back up without getting sore. If we're in performance in a team sport, your recovery is vital. And it should all be nasal breathing will lead to this. So here's a few breathing exercises. We'll just quickly go through. These are part of the Buteyko Clinic International. This first one here is to decongest the nose. No longer do we have to put anything up our nose to decongest it. We've got nitric oxide, which I talked a few slides back. It's a vasodilator. It's an airway opener. So to do this, it's very, very simple. When it says take a normal breath in and out through your nose, that doesn't mean through the mouth. It's through the nose. That's a normal breath. And it's a controlled breath. It's not a big breath. It's a nice in for 4, in for 5, out for 4 or 5. Now, as you breathe out, this is a breath hold after an exhale. After you breathe in, and then you breathe out, you will pinch your nose just as the air starts to run out, just before you want to breathe in. You'll pinch your nose, and then you'll gently move your head up and down, or you'll gently move your body. What this does is it creates carbon dioxide. Then when you feel this medium to strong air hunger, which is the feeling like you really want to breathe, you'll release your fingers and you'll breathe calmly in through your nose. You'll breathe calmly out through your nose. You'll get your breath back by breathing in through your nose, then out through your nose. You then become nice and calm, and then you should notice that your airway, that your nose now has become a lot clearer. And the way that you can test this is you see which one side of your nose, which often there is, one side's a bit more blocked than the other. Next time you get a cold, do this exercise. You only have to build up until that medium to strong air hunger. Don't go too far that you'll have to open up your mouth and breathe through your mouth. So as soon as you feel like that urgency to breathe, and then you control that breath. Now you may have to repeat this 4 to 5 times to get that nose really clear. But if you're a lifter, lifting weights in a gym or anything like that, and you want to breathe, get that oxygen deep down, you want to get breathing through your nose to provide that intra-abdominal support, this is a great exercise to do to actually activate that diaphragm. And then you go about lifting your heavy weights. Now, however, you need to be a little bit experienced and be cautious with this, particularly if you've got anxiety, racing mind, or anything like that. Doing a breath hold might not be that conducive. So just be careful. It's not suitable for people with high or low blood pressure, anxiety, panic disorder, or cardiovascular issues, or during pregnancy, because we are cutting blood flow off to the brain. But the outcome is that we're going to decongest our nose. So to decongest the nose, the breath hold must be at least 15 to 30 seconds to be effective, and it also works to shift mucus from lungs and relieve constipation. So benefits of a breath hold after an exhale, not on an inhale, it's after an exhale. So once again, that's a decongestion of the nose, so we can do that anytime. So I often do this exercise before I do my breathing exercise, because then I've got my 2 nostrils open and I'm getting the most effective of the oxygen uptake. Now, the next exercise we've got here is a recovery breath, or a focus breath, or even a warm-up breath. It's quite multi-use here. And this, however, if you're an asthmatic, this is your go-to exercise. This is one that I give to all the asthmatics at the first symptom of chest tightness. So once again, if you get exercise-induced asthma and you feel that chest getting really tight, you'll take a small breath in, a small breath out, and very similar to decongest the nose, we're just going to pinch our nose and we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then we'll take 2 small breaths in through the nose, out through the nose. So about 10 to 15 seconds. Our next exhale, we'll do it again. And we're just pinching our nose. Don't pinch it too hard. I just block the nostril entrance to the nostrils there because we've got very, very smooth and thin skin. We don't want any nosebleeds. So what does this do? It introduces air hunger. Remember, the less we breathe, the more oxygen we get to our brain. This is why it's called a focus breath, because we're now putting oxygen where we need it so we can focus and we can concentrate. By doing this exercise too, we're decluttering the mind. It's a calming exercise. We are putting more blood flow to the brain. We're calming ourselves down. But the big one is it's an emergency exercise to help with asthma, panic attacks, and hyperventilation. So it's got multi-dimensional, it's multi-use, but it is so simple. Now, if you can't hold your breath for 5 seconds, hold it for 2, hold it for 3. It's going to serve the same purpose. So it's a very, very simple exercise. There's nothing hard about these Buteyko Clinic exercises. The challenge for this Buteyko is to do them consistently. It's day in and day out till the adaptations occur. It is not a quick fix system. It's not the magic pill. But if you get this right, your life will change for the better. So we've got the steps exercise for Buteyko. This is an interesting one to build up your tolerance to carbon dioxide. So once again, it's also a form of anaerobic training. If you do this properly and if you've got injuries and things like that, we can still train anaerobically by doing this exercise. So you exhale through the nose, hold the breath, and you'll walk 5 to 10 paces while holding your breath. You'll stop walking, and then you'll breathe in and out through your nose for 30 seconds or so while standing still. So what we've done there just by walking for that 5 to 10 paces is once again we've increased the carbon dioxide production in our muscles. It goes into our bloodstream. So we're building up our tolerance to CO2. Now you may start at 10 paces. You think, oh, that was too easy. Well, add another 5. We are trying to build up this tolerance to CO2. So the more that you do it, the more resistant you're going to become, or more resilient you're going to become. So during a session, practice up to 10 repetitions. Now you may be starting at 10, but you may find you get all the way up to 30 steps. The challenge for you though is once we get higher and higher into these steps is to recover through the nose and through the nose only. You'll know when you've gone too far with this, when we get to that medium to strong air hunger, is that you'll want to breathe through the mouth. You've gone too far, so just back it off. The other way that you may find is you might get jelly legs, which is just your lactic acid buildup. We're trying to avoid that lactic acid buildup. We're trying to increase our buffering system so we don't get there. So there's a couple of indicators to look out for. But as a baseline test, and you can probably do this yourself, I look to get my clients up to 60 steps consistently while holding their breath. And for children, it's a little bit higher. It's up to about 80. But you won't achieve that in the first session. That may take 6 months. It may take 12 months. There are some other tests that I also do, and there are some other exercises. And if we get too busy in life, these are exercises that you can do anywhere. You can do it from walking from your car to your workplace. You can walk up and down your shopping aisles pushing a trolley, do small breath holds. They're all serving the purpose of building up your tolerance to CO2. Remember what we said about the catalyst to breathe is building up CO2, and that releases the oxygen. Without CO2, we can't release oxygen. So these are some of the exercises here that build up tolerance to that CO2. Once again, steeped in science. There's so much research and papers out there. It's on my website. It's on the Buteyko Clinic website, Buteyko Clinic International. So I hope you guys have learned something tonight. Oh, there's one more. Oh, I thought that was it. Breathing exercises, our control pause. This is a test that we take to measure breathlessness and how quickly your body builds up CO2. I like to get my clients to breathe normally in and out through their nose for about a minute or two before we attempt this one, just to really calm themselves down And by that, it's just 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. It's a coherence breathing, but it also regulates that nervous system so you are nice and calm. So just relaxing after a minute or two, you breathe silently and calmly through your nose. And that's the other thing about nasal breathing, or breathing in particular. Breathing should not be heard and it should not be seen. So if you're looking around and you hear somebody breathing, they've got a dysfunctional breathing pattern. If you see somebody taking too many big breaths in, they've got a dysfunctional breathing pattern. Unless, of course, they're doing conscious connection breathing, where that's required to get a particular outcome. So you take two normal silent breaths in and out through your nose. You exhale and lightly block your nose. And then we're going to time the number of seconds until you feel the first definite desire to breathe, or the first involuntary movement of your breathing muscle, which is the diaphragm and the throat. There's another one that I also like to add in there too. Sometimes you're feeling that CO2 build up and you think, oh, I need to breathe. That's when it's a good time to breathe. Now, this is a measurement of how quickly your body gets used to CO2. So if you're on the lower side, say let's between say 3 and 10 seconds, you've got a very low tolerance to CO2. This is not a sign of fitness. It is how your body uses or gets used to having CO2 in its system, which is vitally important for us to breathe correctly and for oxygen delivery. Our control pause should be around 25 seconds. So if you're not anywhere near that, and if you're hovering around that 12 to 13 on average, that's where most of the people that I've tested are on that 10 to 12, 13 seconds. The exercises that the Buteyko Clinic provide, and I provide through them, to build up that tolerance to CO2, once we get to that 89%, the research shows that you are 89% less likely to have a dysfunctional breathing pattern. And as I said, this is not a sign of fitness. There was a research paper done in Japan in 2019, I believe, where they tested, I think it was 1,573 professional, semi-professional athletes. And it came out that 92% of them had some type of dysfunctional breathing pattern. Most of it was mechanical. So they weren't using their diaphragm correctly. They were breathing through their mouth. The thing with this one here, though, once you've finished your control pause and take your fingers away from your mouth, it's not a major breath hold. It's your tolerance to CO2 measurement or breathlessness test. The first breath should be the same as prior to the measurement. So there should be no difference between the start and the finish, and making that perfectly clear. Because if we have to take a bigger breath, it means we've gone too far. So there's some of the exercises that are covered in the Buteyko Clinic or through the breathing coach to get you on the path to swapping over from being a mouth breather to a nasal breather. Now, I've coached anybody from 5-year-olds all the way up to 85-year-olds. There is no age limit on how to breathe better. I've helped many people in sports environments, professional NRL, NRLW, through to triathletes training for NUSA and Hawaiian Ironman, through to those people that have just want to breathe better. They've got asthma, singers who want to be able to get better lung capacity. There is no limit to what breathing better can help for you. So that's it from me. I hope you have learnt lots about the wonderful world of breathing. And I get questioned and asked that all the time is, why do I need a breathing coach? I already know how to breathe because it's automatic. But let's go back to how the most important question I believe is, how are you breathing when you're not thinking about breathing? And are you being as efficient as you possibly can? I believe every asthmatic in particular out there should be looking at the Buteyko breathing method as a complementary intervention along with their pharmacological interventions to get you to breathe better and over time reducing that reliance on the puffers, the relievers, and the preventers. Less anxiety, better overall quality of life. Thank you. Dave, the breathing coach, empowering lives one breath at a time.
Well, there you go, everyone. Everything you needed to know about nasal breathing from the man himself, David Pemberton. David, I couldn't thank you enough for taking the time out and share your knowledge on the Buteyko breathing method. Every time I see you, I'm always looking forward to learning more, and today has been no different. Thank you so much for catching up with us. For everybody out there watching this Zoom, don't forget, next week we've got another special guest coming in. He's a great friend of mine that I've known since I was about 10 years old. His name is Will Weber. He shapes surfboards, and he's been shaping boards and involved in surfing ever since he was born. He's the brother of Greg Weber, Monty Weber, Ben Weber, and Dan Weber. They're a family of surfers that are renowned worldwide. If you want to join us for this great Zoom, it's next Monday at 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Time. As for now, from Dave and myself here in Australia, take care and have an amazing week. We'll see you next time. Cheers.
See you, everybody.